if it's moving. If it's a motor vehicle, then it's all about the Road Traffic Department with Minister JoBeth Colby Davis and Acting Controller Mr. Bertram Boleg. Improving the experience, setting a new standard, providing quality customer experience.
My name is Darnell. I'm at the Fort Charlotte location and the service was excellent. Everybody was very attentive and I'm in and out of here in no time.
We're igniting a revolution here at the Road Traffic Department.
At Fort Charlotte, we are ready to serve you.
Signal left, signal right, blow your horn, windshield wipers.
To serve you in a more expedient and efficient way, the Department of Transport has implemented its new online appointment services at our Fort Charlotte location and also our Carmichael Road location. You don't have to wait in long lines once you make the appointment. We'll show you the steps how you can go by booking that appointment today.
1. Search Road Traffic Department, the Bahamas on Facebook. 2. Click Send Message button. 3. Enter your full name. 4. Choose your inspection date. 5. Choose your traffic location and time. You're done. Confirmation sent in 24 hours.
Commander Bertram Boleg here from the Road Traffic Department. We at the Road Traffic Department are working feverishly to ensure that your visit to the Road Traffic Department is one of remembrance. We are planning to give you high quality service that when you come to the Road Traffic Department, it'll be one that you will never forget. Friendly, comfortable, making you feel at home and part of what's going on at the Road Traffic Department.
At the National Stadium, we are ready to serve you. At Carmichael, we are ready to serve you.
What's the Bahamas doing in the fight against COVID?
We're empowering Bahamians with free testing, free masks, and access to doctors for answers to your questions. Vaccines and boosters are saving lives. We have tighter restrictions at our borders, and we're expanding hospital capacity and hiring more nurses and doctors. We're taking on COVID while reopening schools and keeping our economy moving.
Together, we're moving forward.
Good morning, media colleagues and those joining us via the stream. It is a pleasure to welcome you to the Office of the Prime Minister's weekly press briefing. Today we have an exciting briefing planned for you, and I know that I say that every week, but you will see why in just a moment. I do want to make special mention of our upcoming documentary, The First Six. Do tune in as that is coming up very soon, and we are going to have an exciting documentary planned for you. Without further ado, I am going to introduce Press Secretary Clint Watson.
Thank you, Julian. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, colleagues, all of you joining us this morning. Another week, boy, how fast it goes by. We have a couple of things we want to talk about today, mainly surrounded around the same theme, and that is, of course, crime. Prime Minister would have spoken recently about some crime initiatives and a forum that he would have called for on crime. And so today he's going to give us an update on some of those strategies in crime, as well as we have the Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner and top brass of the Royal Bahamas Police Force here to talk more in detail about the crime initiatives and to take your questions and answers. We're also going to have some other representatives in community who are partnering with in this fight against crime to talk to you specifically about their roles and upcoming things. And then, of course, our exciting season continues with Bahamian food vendors. We have two exciting vendors for you today. So a lot to get to today. So let's begin right off with a special update on crime from Prime Minister, the Honorable Philip Davis, on the latest initiatives. Prime Minister.
The Honorable Prime Minister.
Morning, everyone. I say good morning. Members of the press, in particular, Commissioner of Police and the ESCOM from the Royal Police Force. 2 weeks ago, I chaired a multi-stakeholder meeting at the Office of the Prime Minister, recognizing that reducing crime in the Bahamas will require all of us to work together. Crime is not one problem. It is many difficult problems linked to one another. The solutions must also therefore be linked in a strategic and unified approach. We are building a shared framework for solutions that includes the police, civic organizations, churches, courts, and our communities. Reports of every new loss weighs heavily on our hearts. The lockdowns and curfews of the previous years did not end violence. In many cases, the violence was merely postponed. There is evidence that many of the murders we have seen in recent weeks were related to gang activities and retaliation. The fact that the violence is gang-related does not and should not reduce our grief. Those lost to the violence belong to us and to God. Today, I want to talk about some steps we are taking immediately to reduce the proliferation of illegal weapons on our streets and to disrupt the violence. We will increase police presence in hotspots with saturation patrols for as long as they are necessary. Our communities need more manpower and more resources. The Royal Bahamas Police Force is creating a specialized task force focused on decreasing gang-related crimes and apprehending those involved in firearms trafficking. We are expanding urban renewal to strengthen both community policing and the programs that reach at-risk young people and provide pathways to opportunities and training. We will increase access to mental health services and mental health education through our public health system and community-based initiatives. In recent weeks, we have reintroduced school-based policing so that our schools are safer for our children, teachers, and staff. We need to work harder and earlier to identify at-risk students and then provide education, support, conflict resolution skills, and redirection. In the next few days, I intend to constitute the National Security Council, which will support increased sharing of intelligence across agencies, allowing us to confront our security challenges jointly and with the best information possible. And because criminal activities are not contained by borders, we intend to strengthen our collaboration with international partners as well. the Royal Bahamas Police Force is continuing to recruit new officers to our front lines. We are looking for young people who want to serve their country by protecting our communities. Technology is an important part of policing in the 21st century. We are going to expand and improve the use of drones, CCTV, and the shot spotter sensors so that our police have the tools they need to be effective. More robust intelligence sharing, increasing the capacity of the police, and enhanced technology are all critical. But in the end, reducing violence in our communities also requires strengthening our families and the ties within our communities. I spoke earlier about the tragedy of losing so many of our young people to gang violence, particularly our young men. I want to also say how profoundly disturbed I am about the many cases of violence that target women and children. We should all agree on this one thing. Grown men should stay away from children and should be punished to the fullest extent of our laws when they do not. The sentences should punish the wrongdoing and be lengthy enough to deter others from committing the same crimes. Where existing penalties may not be severe enough, I've asked my Attorney General to lead a comprehensive overview and advise my cabinet of the steps we can take to make these stronger. Bahamians deserve safer streets, safer schools, and safer communities. We all have a role to play. For those of you who despair, but who believe the problem is someone else's to solve, I urge you, get involved. Volunteer in your neighborhood. Look out for each other's children. Pray together. And then outside the church's walls, work together to help those who are in crisis. Mentor and support our young people. It has been such a difficult few years. We can all work together to lift each other up. Thank you so much for your time today. I've invited the Commissioner of Police, the Deputy Commissioner of Police, to speak further about their policing plan. But I'll take a few questions before they come, if you do have any.
Minister, can I get your stance on oil drilling? A recent IPCC report recommended reducing fossil fuels. Can I get the official stance of the Davis administration on oil drilling?
Oil drilling? Well, first of all, our law allows oil drilling. Our law allows oil extraction. There is, though, a policy decision that we are undergoing as we speak, because at the end of the day, climate change is real, and the contributing factors to that is related to not oil drilling, but oil use. And so there has to be a distinction between drilling and extraction. There is mechanisms to know that you have oil and monetize the oil whilst it's still in the ground. But at the moment, we are exploring monetizing our blue carbon and monetizing that, and we think that will be sufficiently monetized for us not to even look at even oil drilling. So as I speak to you at the moment, it is not on our radar and it is not in our contemplation. What we are pursuing right now is monetizing our blue carbon credit. We'll see how that works, and the way I see it working, it may not, the question of oil drilling or oil extraction would be supplanted by the monetization of our blue carbon.
Prime Minister, welcome EJDMC. Prime Minister, can we also, we know that you were exploring a few options to address the increase in fuel prices. Any movement with that as yet? Any updates on what we can expect? The rising.
Well, what I have been doing is exploring ways and means of putting up mechanisms for the challenge of inflation. Right, that includes, of course, the oil, the cost of oil. What I have done is I've engaged with several of our ship airlines, shipping agencies, and I've been able to work out an arrangement with one of them that has already agreed and has already put in effect the reduction of the cost of containers coming into the country. I don't want to identify them because we don't want a challenge as to what they're charging, but we have negotiated up to a 38% discount on containers coming to the Bahamas, particularly from the Far East, and we are waiting to hear what that discount will be from Florida. But those are the efforts we have engaged in to assist in alleviating the inflationary impact on the vulnerable amongst us.
Tribune?
Prime Minister, we know that in recent weeks there have been a lot of comments issued about the National Food Program that was implemented under the previous administration. How do you respond to criticism in some quarters that your comments, as well as that of other cabinet ministers about the initiative, could potentially prejudice investigations about the program?
I think, again, that's the spin. And I also see where I'm being blamed for, or I'm being criticized for, as it were, attacking NGOs. If anyone looked at what I had to say, if anyone understood what I had to say, it was not an attack. It is an effort to understand what went on. There is a statement that suggests that the facts are as clear as day. Well, show us the facts, and we too might come to the conclusion that it is as clear as day. As I speak, as I stand here, we still don't have a full picture of what went on. I'm not criticizing the NGOs. And as I said, when I spoke about the NGOs, we would not be talking about this if the former government had done their job. Their job, as was required by the law, was to account for the funds that were being expended. And I also warned them that the Transparency International and other international agencies who are concerned with this perception of corruption indicated that we have to be careful with what they call pandemic spending, because it could be used in a way that is abusive. And I pointed out to them, it was not my words, I was just quoting and alerting them to that. So if they had accounted, if they had done the accounting for the funds that were expended, we would not be having this discussion today. We are embarking on the accounting. We are finding out that there have not been information not being provided to the accountants. The accountants have brought to my attention that, look, we can't get information. We don't know what this is about. It's not about the NGOs. It's about, if you put funds in the hands of NGOs, should they not be made to account for it as well? Or should we just ignore it?
Excuse me, one per agency. Our news, Bertha, thank you.
In your address, you spoke to crime against or violence against women and girls, and you mentioned about sentences or penalties that are long enough to deter others from doing the same thing. I just wanted to get your response to, I guess, criticisms of the National Security Minister giving his comments about that plea deal regarding the 14-year-old girl and the 40-year-old man. Is it safe to say that you disagree with him, saying that the 4-year sentence was too short, and what is your response to those calling for him to resign?
First of all, what we have to appreciate, that sentencing is in the purview of the judge and the court. It is not for me or anyone else to comment on what the judge may have done. We may have our view as to what we may have done, but it is what the judge did. Now, insofar as sentencing in respect to crimes against women, I've made myself elusively clear. right? We need to protect our women. We need to ensure that the laws are enforced to the utmost so as to deter further assaults on our women and to deter the violence against women. And that is my position, and I continue to say so.
And calls for him to resign?
Pardon me?
Calls for him to resign. There has been calls for him to resign over his comments.
But I
just wanted to get your response on that.
But I don't know that what he has done amounts to that. He has already expressed his regrets in my conversations with him, and if you follow what he had to say, it appears to be more of his personal view, and he has to come to learn as a young politician that when he holds a post as he does, his personal views may be best kept with himself and personal.
JCN?
Mr. Prime Minister, when can we expect an answer to the proposal by the Simonet Group to mine limestone off of 5,000 acres in Andros? I know when the PLP was in opposition, they were strictly against it, but the Foreign Affairs Minister said that it's currently under review, so there's not really a clear stance on it as yet. When can we expect an answer for that?
Well, I know that there was a committee formed by the cabinet, a subcommittee of cabinet was formed, and they are doing their due diligence. Part of it was to engage the views of the residents of North Andros, which one or two of the members of the committee went down to listen to, I think it was last Saturday. And so the timing of that would of course, be tied to when the subcommittee would have done their work and report to us. I don't know when that will be.
Okay, is that it?
Prime Minister, good morning to you, sir.
Morning.
What effort is being made to really assist? There's a lot of persons on the streets. For whatever reason, but they seem to be suffering they're in need of mental assistance. There's a lot. And there's this gentleman who had damaged somebody's vehicle, and the police had taken him away. But they're saying that if somebody hurts him, they could be charged. What is the government doing to really assist persons on the streets who are suffering from mental health?
Well, if you would have heard in my statement just now, I did address the issue of mental health. That is a serious concern, and we are attempting, as I speak, to recruit more social workers in respect who would have some experience in dealing with mental health patients. We're trying to recruit more psychiatrists and psychologists to assist. We're attempting to also put them in the schools because we're seeing a tremendous a number of young people having difficulty coping, and so we need to address that as well. So mental health is high on our priorities, and we're doing it by trying to provide more resources, by recruiting personnel and experts in that area, and to seek to have counseling of these persons. One of the major challenges we have is that the Mental Health Act, as presently constructed, requires modernization so that we could have more, what I call more intervention into personal lives, and that the barriers to get to them is sort of broken down because there are some statutory provisions that has to be followed. For example, to have someone committed to silence if they need to, or even to take them into custody for the purpose of evaluation. The steps that have been taken, and while you're taking those steps, incidents could occur, as you pointed out. But we are aggressively looking as to how we deal with that. And part of the challenge has been that the manifestation of mental health issues is sometimes difficult for persons to come to grips with. And there's still a stigma that if I go to a psychiatrist to talk through my challenges, that this label of being crazy comes out, and the time has come for us to understand that mental health illness is like an illness. It's an illness that requires treatment, and there's nothing bad about it. It doesn't do anything to, or not do anything to your reputation. It's just like if you're sick, you need to go to a doctor. If the illness relates to your mental health, you go to see a doctor as well.
Final question, Global Radio.
Good morning, Prime Minister. I'm Shelley Lewis from Global.
Yes.
My concern is really crime. You know, crime has escalated out of control within recent times. We have, I think, more than 16 murders just for the month of March. And I see that the top brass here this morning. But the thing is, you mentioned some measures being implemented, as much as the saturation patrol. But recently, in just 72 hours, we had 4 men gunned down in areas that supposed to have been part of the saturation patrol, the inner city communities. That seems to be the hotspot. What impact does saturation patrol and these other measures have in terms of crime fighting, and what other measures does the government have to help combat this problem?
Well, again, one of the things I've just been looking at before I even came in here is the possibility of enacting, for example, an anti-gang bill, a bill that be independent, that just address gang behavior, gang membership, and giving the police the ability to have charges made under that anti-gang bill. There's a bill, I mean, 1 or 2 Caribbean countries have such an initiative. I'm looking at it now to make a recommendation to the commissioners of police and the Attorney General to see whether and how that could come within our constitutional construct, because a lot of the provisions that I've seen maybe have some constitutional implications. But insofar what we are doing, I'll let the police, the Commissioner of Police has said, give you the further plans that they are implementing. I think saturation patrol in and of itself is working, and along with that requires other things. So, for example, what I call the violence breaker initiative, where persons who would have been involved in gangs before, who may have been to prison, and who understand the streets a bit better maybe than us, and who has some influence over these people, to get them engaged and involved in brokering feuds that's existing out there. But those are some of the things, but I'll leave it for the Commissioner of Police and the Deputy Commissioner to highlight some of those things that they have implemented and now continuing to do.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
Thank you very much. Bye. Thank you. Bye. A violence breaker there. That's all.
We're now, as Prime Minister said, we'll invite the Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner to continue our presser this morning, talking more about the crime plan. We're going to invite Commissioner Paul Roll to the podium, and he will continue with this segment and invite his officers as necessary to take your questions and answers this morning. Commissioner.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Clint. Members of the press, I'll give you a brief overview of where we are today. And I'll invite Deputy Commissioner, who I've put to lead the charge with these initiatives, to come, and he'll share some of that with us. I want to start by saying that we in the Royal Bahamas Police Force take the issue of crime seriously, and we will do all that we have to do to address crime in areas where we see crime. We have, in the recent weeks and perhaps months, saw an increase in violent crimes, particularly murder and homicides, which tend to garner much more attention than the regular house break-ins or other street-level crimes. We've also seen a flare-up in armed robberies. You're saying, I think I addressed that the last time, and I just want to again caution persons who are traveling, particularly in the night, women and men, because we have seen men as well being victims. Be aware of your surroundings, particularly getting home, coming out of your vehicles, and persons are preying on them. The issue of and the prevalence of firearm and illegal firearms in this country continues to be of grave concern to us in the Royal Bahamas Police Force. We have been working assiduously with our international partners to identify sources and methods and persons who have been actively engaged in the illicit purchase, in some instances, and importation of firearms into the country. We have identified that the majority of those firearms, illegal firearms, have been coming from Florida, South Florida in particular. And what we have found is in the recent months, a number of courier services that have sprung up in the southern Florida communities, and I've asked our partners to assist us in identifying these persons and companies. And we have our liaison officers in South Florida who are also working in partnership. That is yielding positive results for us as we try to interdict a lot of this firearm that is destined for the Bahamas. Last week in Miami, we were able to interdict a shipment of, I think, 5 firearms that were destined here. And you heard earlier that we reported earlier in the year where we've had a seizure of 8 firearms, and then again a couple of weeks ago in Bimini. And for the year, we have, in the Royal Bahamas Police Force, we have seized 109 illegal firearms that we took off the streets in the Bahamas. This does not include those that were intercepted in the United States. And one interdiction that we had earlier in the year, there was some 17 firearms that were interdicted on their way to our shores, and then the 5 last week. And so the efforts with our partners in the United States, I must say, is working and paying off our dividends. And we are doing our part on this side through our intelligence gathering methods to identify persons with illegal firearms. And again, I want to make an appeal to persons within the community. If you know your relatives and your loved ones have illegal firearms, ask them to turn them in. And my last appeal here, since then, we have seen persons have responded. I want to thank those persons who have responded with providing us information. I want to again appeal to others, because we still believe that there are more firearms on our streets. Illegal firearm, that is, we are referring to. When we have recorded for the year to date some 43 homicides. The majority of these homicides occurred in the area we regard as between Baintown, Grantstown, and the Grove, Coconut Grove. That they have a about 50% or more. I think it's 23 of those murders occurred in there. I know you've heard number 42. Of course, we had another homicide last night, and those I tried to make sure that we, different media houses have been playing with numbers. We are concerned with whether it's one murder or two murders. We take it seriously and not so much concerned about numbers. But we want to bring resolve to all of these murders and to bring some level of satisfaction to family members. And we want to prevent as much as possible these murders. And where they're not prevented, then we want to try and bring some resolution to it. We have also recovered 1,719 rounds of illegal ammunition, and we have seen in these seizures an increase in the ammunition for these assault weapons, the 7.62 and 223. The 7.62 ammunition, which is used predominantly in the AK-47, and the 223 in the AR-15 rifle. These are, the type of weapons that they're using in Ukraine in warfare. We don't need those in this country, but that seemed to be the easy availability and the appetite for persons for those type of firearms. And so we want to continue, and I'm going to invite Deputy Commissioner Fernanda to come in a minute to speak about Operation Ceasefire, which we have launched on the 25th of March and doing a great job and is reaping dividends. We have seized, since we've launched this, some 5 illegal firearms. And we've had some of those, again, where members of the public have been calling us and giving us information on those. I think the Prime Minister touched it correctly when he said that the majority of these murders are between drugs, gang relations, and retaliation. And we have seen much too much of these persons who are refusing to use the criminal justice system but want to exact street justice. And the street justice simply means I'm going to deal with this myself. And so I don't know whether you want me to put Deputy on now. If you have a question for me based on what I've said, I could take your question, and then he'll come and speak some more about the operations. You see, he looks battle ready.
You noted that a lot of these illegal firearms are coming from South Florida. I'm not sure if you said just how many have come from South Florida.
I didn't give a number. I said the majority. It's the majority, most of them. But it's not only South Florida, okay? That's the majority. We have seen firearms, illegal firearms, coming from Texas and Georgia to a lesser extent. But I'll have to get those figures, but I'm satisfied the majority. And these initiatives that we have been intercepting, they were all in South Florida, these recent seizures.
The courier service challenge that you said that you're having, I know some time back there were persons bringing in parts of guns and then assembling them when they landed. Is this the same challenge that you're having now?
Not so much parts, we have seen in recent times persons were actually they became more creative and putting the weapons in things like cornflakes and the various, like the children's food, and then they pack them in the boxes and they're shipping it labeled as grocery. And so we are doing some things and with the companies over there. Some of them are working with us and to help to identify trends.
Any consideration being given for maybe gun amnesty events or for persons to come and bring in their weapons?
Well, that wouldn't be me. I believe a gun amnesty would be good. Okay, but that wouldn't be my jurisdiction to do that.
You touched on it a bit earlier, but can you maybe provide some more insight into some of the crime trends we're seeing in the Bahamas?
In regards to?
These murders, some of the gang activity, etc.
Yeah, much of those were retaliation. Let's say if I go through, I'll just take you through the last 5 or thereabouts that we had. If you look at those, we had a murder in Malcolm Road the other day. We're not certain what that is about. It seemed to be domestic related. Chap was home and along with a friend watching television, and Poison, we have the video that showed what happened. Just walked to the room window, discharged shots into the bedroom, the room that they were in, not a bedroom, one of the sitting rooms, and just shot both of the individuals. We had the murder on Cynthia Mother Pratt Park. That particular individual, we believe, is associated with victims of a murder that has occurred a couple of weeks ago, last month. And we believe now, that is still under investigation to try and determine what is his relations, because he was just sitting on the park watching a game. Persons walked up to him and shot him. So he was not involved in any active argument or anything there, but he is an affiliate of one of the deceased, or both of the deceased. We had the murder in Camp Road, which the father was killed. We don't believe that he was the target. We believe the target was somebody else. And we are going to be working with that family to make sure that these people don't go back and try and deal with the individual that they wanted. The murder on last night down in at Hollywood Sub off Cowpen Road. This young man that was killed, again, he is an affiliate of a chap that was murdered a couple of weeks ago. We believe that the persons were driving that type of vehicle. We're not certain yet if he was the intended target as much as the person who owns that vehicle that we believe that they were looking for. He's not the owner. Okay.
Sorry, Brittany McDermott, we want to get to all of the media houses because we do still have a lot of press conference to go. Brittany?
Yeah. Commissioner, the Prime Minister spoke about increasing police presence in hotspots, but he also mentioned about the recruitment of new officers. I know the Minister said a few weeks ago that the police force is experiencing a shortage.
Yeah.
Is the police force then, I guess, stretched in dealing with these issues, or what impact is that shortage having in terms of increasing police presence in these hotspots amid the heightened criminal activity while still doing regular police work?
Ideally, we would like to have much more, but if you know the law of supply and demand, you're never going to have sufficient. But those that we have, what we have done is we had shifted some of our resources to go into these areas, and we scale back on some of the other areas that are not posing much of a challenge. That's the way law enforcement is done. And as regards to recruitment, presently we have 60 officers, I think, they're about in Grand Bahama, and have 100 going in tomorrow.
Back on that, Commissioner. So then, what is the complement of the force, and what do you think is an ideal number in terms of recruitment?
Based on our findings, we are short right now. This is going to be about 800 officers, that's constables, and that is because you have every year we have roughly 130 officers who retired or resigned. And I have seen that for the last 4 or 5 years, we lost about 600 officers and only taken, I think, 200. The 100 that graduated and we have another 60 in now, and I'm putting in another 100 now. So that's 260. So when those 260 go against that 600, then the ones who retired last year and those who retired this year, we have some 91 officers will retire this year. So and then they already short, which I peg around 800 to 900 officers. The ideal number, what we have right now is we're down, but we need to have at least 4,000 police officers, because unlike a country that is just one island or one landmass, we have vast expanse, some 500,000 square miles and several islands. And it's not only island. You take Andros, for example. You hear Andros, but Andros is not one island. Andros is 4 islands, because you have South Andros that has no connection to Mangrove Key. A Mangrove Key has no connection to Central Andros, and you could drive from Central Andros to North Andros. And then you have the Berry Islands, which is a couple of islands. You have Eleuthera. You have from North Eleuthera all the way down into South Eleuthera, and in the various Spanish wells, for example. You have on one side, you have the Current, you have Harbor Island, you have North Eleuthera, Central Eleuthera, South Eleuthera. You have to police all of those. And, they are some of the bigger islands. And then, of course, again, you get into Abaco, Grand Bahama. So those numbers go up. The population, though, and the majority of the crime is here in New Providence, and this is where we concentrate the majority of our resources.
Royston Jones, and then we'll take one final question from Global.
Commissioner, can you speak to some of the challenges of enforcing the age of consent and what goes into sort of chasing after these matters when we find men abusing underage girls? What's the process for police? How difficult has that been in terms of enforcement?
Well, the enforcement of that is not a police-only situation. Because you look at the provision in the Sexual Offences Act, for one, you have the Child Protective Order Act, and you have the Domestic Violence Act. And all of these mandate the necessary reporting. So in the schools, for example, the teacher or the guidance counselor, there's a responsibility put on those, if it is brought to their attention, to bring it to us. Also, there's a mandate on family members, parents, that if they were to see something or suspects something, to bring it to us. The social service department, the church, and the wider community. And so once it is brought to us in the police, we do our investigations, and those investigations, depending on the age of the child, involve the social services, the child protection unit, and to try and address all of those issues. So it is not as simple as what the police is doing, but collectively, all of us have a role to play and a responsibility in dealing with it.
If there are any hindrances when officers go after these matters?
Sometimes we have, I don't know if you say if it's so much hindrance as much as it might be, the victim may not want to talk. And that's why we have other agencies to help and to talk to them and to try to get them to open up and to say what is happening.
Global 99.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned something very vital, the fact that we're seeing high-powered weapons similar to those being used in the Ukrainian war.
Mm-hmm.
And that is obviously a major concern for many persons because they're not getting into the hands of ordinary persons like me.
Right.
You also mentioned that you have interdicted shipments coming into the Bahamas as close as South Florida,
yes.
And you've taken some off the street, but they're getting into the hands of what the Prime Minister recently mentioned, that we've seen a gang war.
Mm-hmm.
And have you interdicted persons responsible for the shipment, or can you identify exactly where these guns are coming from? You mentioned countries, but have you identified persons?
Yes. Last week, Fernando, we charged some persons with the shipment. Last month, I think on February, we had charged persons here with a shipment that came in, and we have also identified persons in the U.S. The United agencies in the U.S. are helping us. They are doing their investigation with those, and we have had persons that were indicted and charged, and we have persons that will be indicted and charged, but we are working that, and we have identified them. But these seem to be the weapon of choice in these persons. Yeah, we have recovered a number of those.
And would you say that the increase in armed robberies can also be associated with the funding of these illegal firearms?
Most of the armed robberies firearms were used. Illegal firearms are that as well, because they are handguns or the same automatic weapons that I'm talking about. They are contributing to that, and they're also been a contributing factor to drugs. If you notice, in the not so recent past, we've had a lot of drug interdictions. Okay, 3,000 pounds, 2,000 pounds. Well, those drugs belong to somebody, and that somebody ain't happy. You see, and this is what it is. So you have the gang members now, who a lot of those persons involved with these gangs, who are working with these drug traffickers. So the drugs go missing, and then someone has to pay, and that is really the way this is going. And so you got these different gangs, and one is accusing the next one of causing the police to get their shipment, and then the war starts. So he killed one of his own, then he goes and look for it, and they start exacting. And so we have to identify who they are and try to put a stop to it.
So, Commissioner, before I let you go, we do have a question coming out of Grand Bahama asking if the school policing plan extends to that island as well.
Not yet, but I've seen the comments with the union folks down there. What I've said in the last interview was that as the Ministry of Education identifies the need for school police, we will do what we can to assist and facilitate those schools. And where we identify a school as problematic, we will make representation and hope to do some intervention in there to get some officers into those schools.
Thank you so much. We can invite it to yes.
Deputy will speak now about some of the initiatives that he is leading to help keep us all safe. Fernanda?
Thank you very much, Commissioner, and good morning to all. I just wish to begin by bringing the public up to date with our latest homicide, which occurred last night shortly after 10 p.m. on Cowpen Road. A young individual was standing near a vehicle when he was approached by two armed men who shot him about the body and fled on foot. He died on scene. Based on our intel thus far, we believed that he was not the intended target. The owner of that vehicle, who is known to the police, an associate of that individual, we believe that he may have been the target, but he was using his vehicle during the time of the incident. So that is a concern for us, and we wish to really bring it home to members of the public that if you know or you have friends or any relatives who you know is involved in the life of crime, be very careful hanging around them or even using their vehicle to go right around the corner to the store, because you could become a potential target and lose your life. We have noticed this spike with respect to homicides, which began the last week in February and which continue on into the entire month of March and right into the first week in April. In the month of March, we recorded a total of 22 murders. I think that is one of the highest months ever in the history, 22 murders. But I'm pleased to say at this time that out of the 22 in March, we have solved 11 of those matters, which is before the court at this time. But we want to go in that preventative mode. We want to go in that preventative mode. Based on the victims in the month of March, we have discovered that 4 of the victims, the deceased persons, were on bail for murder and were being monitored. Persons charged with respect to their matter, we noticed that there were 3 being monitored and on bail for murder. So we are really concerned about individuals who are charged, put before the court, later come out and still involved in crime. We try to bring all of the fractions together. It is clear now, very clear, that these murders are pretty much, the majority of them are connected. And the scene is speaking to us. And we are connecting all of the dots and crossing the T's. And based on the intel, the majority of those matters are connected. The hot spots where these matters are occurring, we mentioned the Grove area. The entire Grove area, you're looking at the Ridgeland Park, just cross the way from Robinson Road, Ridgeland Park, and then you move into Camp Road. From Camp Road, you move into Fox Hill. That is the hot areas right now. And based on that, we have launched Operation Ceasefire. The officers who are attached to this unit were carefully selected, who are familiar with the gang culture and who are familiar with the majority of the criminals out there. So they are well selected. And there, we have a mandate to target those prolific offenders and gang members to disrupt their operation. And we are doing just that. In those hot areas, we have stepped up our patrols, our analysts who analyze our crime situation, looking at the time, the dates, the general area in the Grove that they occur in, and who are the possible suspects with the different fractions of the gang. They are assisting in analyzing and directing the operations to go after these individuals, and we are getting some success. One may say how we are measuring the Grove. The majority of the murders thus far occurred right in that Grove, which we call the policing area, South Central. And one say, well, you all have saturated patrol, and these murders continue to happen. I will use murder number 42, the individual who was shot on the park. There was a basketball game in progress, and he was sitting on the bleachers with other spectators. An individual just approached, casual, wearing his hoodie and his mask, face mask, and just walk up as a spectator and just approached the individual and shot him and ran off. How bold are these individuals? But we continue to pay focused attention on these areas and take the fight to these gang members with a view of disrupting them. We had a meeting with the DPP, Mr. Franklin Williams, just last week, with a view of targeting these gang members and to throw the book at them with respect to organized criminal gangs. We have an attorney from that office who is working closely with our gang unit with a view of building the evidence to go after these individuals and throw the net and to put them before the court. and we are doing just that. We have some evidence, and we continue to build to try to disrupt their operation. One may say, why we don't bring those fractions together? That happened on numerous occasions. Sometimes I feel like the blood is on my hand, and the reason why I say that, because I was involved with a number of those individuals with family members, and I'm talking about sitting across the room from each other. And we want to find out what's going on, man. Tell us what's happening. Let's resolve these matters. And they never take a full face looking at each other. All they will say that, I mean, nothing, everything cool with me and him. I don't have no vibe with him. And they continue to say that in the presence of their loved ones. Shortly after their release, I showed them the murder count was at maybe around in the 70s. I said, if you all refuse to let us know. Sometimes parents wonder, why the police locking up my son every other weekend? Because based on our intel, we are trying to keep them alive. Because we know individuals, and they are not loyal to each other. This gang will pimp this one off. That's why you wonder how they are so on target. On target with these individuals. You all see the footage making this round on social media and how it is well planned. You could see based on the footage and mapped out. And it's clear. So they are not loyal to each other, and they are tit for tat with each other. So this is what we are up against with individuals, and we speak to them over and over. We bring them in, family members. Look at the recent matters. Did you hear any lot of cry out by members of the recent, a number of those recent shootings? But we want to encourage them to please, whatever information that you may have, to please come to us. We have family meetings. And we always encourage family members to speak up. Let us try to save your loved one or save another. So the police is doing what they are mandated to do. And we will continue to take it up another notch. We cannot do it alone. And that's why we continue to reach out to other areas to just join forces, especially in our communities. These incidents are happening right in our communities, in front of our little children. We are saying safer communities, but the fear of crime, based on what is going on, it's at that high. And as mentioned by the commissioner, the trend is high-powered rifle, which could penetrate this wall. Which could penetrate this wall. I won't talk about the wooden houses. They will just tear it apart. And that is the danger. We continue to go after these individuals who are trafficking. I've made my recommendation to the commissioner that we move the gang and firearms unit from the Central Criminal Investigation Department to move that in a separate area, more structured, so that they could have a focused approach. Just like the drug unit, they just deal with drugs. I don't want that distraction with CID when there's so much other investigation going on, and you find that sometimes they have to pull an officer this way to do this and to do that. So we are looking at a more focused approach with respect to firearms and going at these gang members. And that is in place. The commissioner gave me the blessing, and that is being set up at this time. I'm also recommending a designated court that just focus on firearms. A designated court. We have to deter these individuals who are in possession of firearm and using it in the commission of the crime. If you catch an individual today with a gun chucked in his face, I see no reason why within a week we have the capacity, the police force, the Royal Bahamas Police Force have the capacity from the firearms technical area to ensure the reports are generated in days to be presented before the court. So in a week's time, I see no reason. Suddenly the police, the arresting officer, and the firearm expert, why should a matter take 2 years? He gets bail today, 2 years, and get locked up again for possession of firearm. Something is wrong with that. But we continue to stay focused. And as I said, our mandate is to ensure that the Bahamian people are safe. We continue to move with the team, targeting drug houses within the communities, what is creating that monster. As the commissioner said, when the shipment come in, it trickles right down and it's right into the community, and then the sales of drugs continue, which is messing up the minds of our young people who we are trying to save. There's plenty of talent out there with the young people, and it's up to us to come together. As they say, it takes a village to raise a child, to come together and to ensure that we protect our young people. But I just want to say, and I encourage my officers, it's not easy, especially the homicide officers who are running from one scene to the next. And I try to encourage them to remain focused. It's not easy. There was an individual in that count, and you saw the footage. The first time they target him, they miss him. When we was able to locate him, he just got grazed right through the vehicle, got grazed. We brought him in, quizzed him. He refused to give us any information. He went to a particular church right after he was released from us and asked the members there and the pastor, say, please pray for me. They trying to kill me. And even then, he didn't even open up to say, well, this John Brown, or this the reason. They tried to get him to open up to the police, and he refused. Days later, he was a dead man. We are losing our young men on both sides of the coin, as the accused person and as the victims, the deceased persons. We are losing them day after day, and we have to try to save them and to disrupt them. But we will not be deterred with these handful of individuals who continue to reap havoc. We will take the fight to them, to disrupt them, and to ensure that the Bahamian people are safe. So please, as we go after them, I'm encouraging the Bahamian people to support your police in this fight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner, for really giving us a very comprehensive look and detail of how we are fighting this crime measure. As we wrap up, I'm going to call Dr. Carlos Reed, who is one of our community partners in this fight against crime, just to really briefly say what we're doing, what we're facing, how they're dealing with it, real briefly as we wrap up this morning.
Good afternoon, everybody. As the Prime Minister alluded to, we have a couple of programs that we have initiated. One is the shock treatment. Our first season we are in right now, even as we speak. We have 14 young persons in there. We also will be bringing violence interrupters back, where we have already started to identify persons in these communities that are influential, and our goal is to be able to bring them so we could interrupt some of these situations before they become where the police have to detect them. That is where we are. We also have a program that we have launched inside the schools where we identify the influential persons, young persons, students in the schools, and we're bringing them into a program so we could be able to gain control back of our schools. So while the police are doing what they're doing, the Ministry of National Security will be looking to see how we make sure that we interrupt these situations, because it's a burden on the taxpayers' money for us to lock up these people. It costs us $100,000 a week to feed inmates at BDOCs. Also costing us almost $20,000 a year to house them. So we are coming up with ideas. We have some that we've already launched that's going to help prevent and interrupt some of these situations before they become a problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Reed, for your continuous partnership with us as we seek to address the crime wave in our country. And indeed, as we wrap up this session, just to encourage people to let's partner together. Sometimes we make this fight against crime a political one, and it's so unnecessary. We have to use our WhatsApp groups, we have to use our Facebook pages to work together with whatever is being used to fight crime, because it affects all of our families and homes, communities, workplaces, churches. We're all impacted by it. And so let's band together and let's try to eliminate the true enemy, which is not anything in politics or anybody else. It's crime. Let's try to work to eliminate that in our country to make it safer for all of our families. Now to the section we always like to talk about, our Bahamian businesses who are doing well. And today we're featuring two companies, one that you should be quite familiar with called Drifters, Araki, and then of course Queen of Beans. I'm going to invite Mr. Ricardo Williams from Drifters to come and tell us a little bit about his business and what he's provided for us today. And then we have Elizabeth and Tariq Williams from Queen of Beans, a coffee business, to talk about that. Ricardo.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Bahamas. Good afternoon, world. Thank you all so much for having us today. And just before I start, want to thank the Prime Minister and the Office of the Prime Minister for creating a platform for small businesses like myself to showcase what we do for you. Now, of course, Drifters at the Fry, we're located at the popular Arawaki Fish Fry. And of course, for us, our North Star is to reflect and to give off the true spirit of hospitality that is so indicative of who we are as Bahamians. We have over-the-hill inspired cuisine, and what we do is also we put our own twist on those things. We are, again, located at Arawaki. We are the 6th restaurant in from the eastern entrance, which is the police entrance. And today, I got my crew here, which again play a very important role of what we do at Drifters in terms of delivering high level of service to our clients, both local and tourists alike. We are doing some pani cake with a guava cream cheese sauce. We have our tamarind glazed wings. And then, of course, we will be highlighting our battered fish strips with a sweet chili. Apart from that, some of our favorite items would be our sky juice. We have a beverage called the WAP, which is our signature drink. You got to come down and try that. From the food side, what, again, we do is we take local fruit, local flavors, coconut, guava, tamarind, anything that you can find locally, and we infuse that with the food that we offer. Our stuffed snapper, I tell people, is to die for. We pan fry our snapper in the skillet. So again, trying to give that authentic Bahamian flavor. So that's Drifters in a wrap. Thank you.
And then we're going to invite the Queen of Beans to come, Tariq Williams, to come and talk about.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tariq Farrington, and I am the co-founder of Queen of Beans Coffee alongside my mummy, Elizabeth Williams. And we started this business almost a year ago during the pandemic. we started this business a year ago during the pandemic, and the reason why we started this business is because we had a lot of great conversations and a lot of moments together, drinking a lot of good and a lot of bad coffee. And so what we did was we came up with this idea just to sell good coffee, just good coffee and only good coffee. And so we partnered with small farmers that are paid well and that take care of their coffee beans. And we also partnered with family-owned roasters that roast their coffee freshly. And so that helps us to provide freshly roasted coffee right to your door. And you can order your coffee at queenofbeans.com, www.queenofbeans.com, or you can check us out on all social media platforms at Queen of Beans. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And with that, we end our presser for this week. Thank you all for being a part. And you always know how to reach us here at the press office, at the office of the Prime Minister, as we seek to keep you updated. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.